Hello and welcome to another episode of the Chrissie Mayr podcast. We are on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, and SoundCloud. And if you are listening to us on iTunes right now, just go ahead and leave a 5-star review, please and thank you. I read the best reviews so long as they are 5 stars. Come see me do stand-up. This weekend, I'm going to be performing at Scotty's Comedy Cove in Springfield, New Jersey. There are shows Friday and Saturday night. I think they're both 9 p.m. shows. So check out my website, chrissiemayer.com, for tickets and details. And if you're in Jersey, there's no excuse. Come see me this weekend at Scotty's Comedy Cove in Springfield. And then I'll be at Hilarities in Cleveland, Ohio, Thursday, June 3rd. Thursday. Tickets for that are also available on my website. Or you can go straight to Hilarities, the comedy club. But yeah, very excited to perform out in Ohio. And lots more dates coming. I'll be in Bethel, Pennsylvania for Comedians of the Compound on June 18th. So we're getting more Comedians of the Compound dates out, which I'm very, very excited about. You know what else I'm really excited about? Cushy Dreams. I want to talk to you guys about Cushy Dreams. They offer a full lineup of premium smokable CBD. They specialize in extraordinary CBD-rich hemp flower, also known as bud, in cans and also pre-roll CBD joints. Here's the website. Ta-da! It tastes great, looks and feels just like high-quality weed, but it's not. You can enjoy all the health benefits of CBD without getting high. Their joints and their bud has under 0.3% THC. It helps you sleep. It's really good for just anxiety. That's why I like to use it. I just take a couple pulls. I really like the joints. I have a couple pulls, and then my mind and body feel relaxed within 10 minutes. And it's good for me because I don't know. I would get too high and get nothing done. So if you're like maybe a little sensitive to marijuana, maybe this is a good choice for you. They take the artisan approach. Every run is in a small batch. It's 100% hand trimmed, never machine trimmed. Here are those 5 packs that I really like. They're very tidy. You can just slip it into your purse or your pocket, and it's very convenient. Each batch is slow cured for 2 to 4 weeks to guarantee maximum freshness and preserve flavor and cannabinoids. And best of all, guys, it's grown right here in the USA. Cushy Dreams has CBD flower and pre-roll joints in specific indica sativa blends like Dream, Energy, Relax, Hustle, Create, Peace, Energy. So whatever you want to do with your day, they have your back. So go to cushydreams.com, Kushy dreams.com, and get some high quality CBD bud. And at checkout, use promo code CMP. You're going to get 20% off your whole order. And I believe that's also free shipping. It's a pretty good deal. Pretty good deal, guys. I'm so excited to have this guy on the podcast today. He is an author of a fabulous new book called Black Victim to Black Victor. He is also the founder of Wrong Speak Publishing. I'm so excited to have him here today. Adam Coleman, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, I'm glad you're here. I wonder if there's a little bit of a lag, but whatever. We're rolling. We're doing it.
Yeah, there is.
It's good. It's good. I'm always excited to speak to authors because to me that just seems like such a huge undertaking and such a huge accomplishment. Have you, when did you know that you when did you know that you wanted to write a book? When did you feel like strongly compelled, like this is what I have to do? Like how did it sort of come to be? How did this book start growing? What was your motivation?
So I, a few years ago, I wanted to write a book. I had gone through like a personal transformation, and I started thinking about personal legacy. And I was especially thinking about my son and what I could leave behind for him. So, our children are our legacy, but I also wanted to leave something for my son that he could be proud of. I wanted to write a book for at least 2 years, but I couldn't really think of what to write about. And then George Floyd. Once George Floyd happened, and on top of COVID, being not much to do, and thankfully I was still working, but all the extracurricular things kind of went out the window in the middle of the pandemic. So Just like a lot of people, we all turn to the internet to find a way to express ourselves, whether it be emotionally or just trying to figure things out. But just the context of the conversation stemming from George Floyd, I felt was unhelpful. Essentially, it was just overly emotional, no logic behind it. And the more I expressed myself, and I started to look for avenues to talk about certain things, it made me realize that this is a topic that I really want to write about. And I got some encouragement as well from people to write about it. So George Floyd was a huge motivation, because it was like, I want to finally talk about what I've been seeing in my life, at the age of 36, what I've seen, what I've experienced, all these different things. And the idea of racism as the most imperative problem for a Black person in America, I disagree personally. I've lived all over this country. I've lived around white people majority of my life. My son is mixed race. And the idea that my biggest problem has been white people, or that is the number one issue, if you want to talk about for Black Americans, I just completely disagree on a variety of reasons, and I wanted to write about it. And so I write very strongly about family. I write about my personal life. I write about the biggest issue facing Black Americans is the breakup of the family and the missing male role model, the missing masculinity for men, the lack of importance of a male figure that I think a lot of women are missing out on. There is something great about a real masculine figure that you can have lead your household. For me, family is of the utmost importance, and missing a solid family structure is the starting point, and it trickles down from there. So it even trickles down to economics. If you're just a single parent, it's just you as the only potential earner, and it just keeps going on from there. So yeah, to kind of answer your question.
Sorry, my dog is growling.
My son enjoys it.
My dog is like growling at the door, and I knew this would happen. I was like, I either have to shut it or I have to keep it open. If it's open, it's going to be too noisy. But now she's just like growling. But I'm not going to get up. I was like, don't laugh, Chrissy. Don't laugh. He's talking about something very serious. What? There's so much to talk about here, because there's like, depending on who you talk about these ideas with, they can call you all sorts of names. And like, oh, that you're denying of racism. You're on the side of the white people or whatever, the man. Did you encounter a lot of backlash from, friends, family, people on the internet, like when you started to voice these opinions, but prior to your writing the book?
For myself, I'm very particular about expressing my ideas in the public. So I'm not one of those people who just post anything, every little feeling I have, I just post it out there. I like to take my time.
You don't take pictures of your sandwiches? Yeah.
No, I don't. I like to be very purposeful. I want to be very thoughtful when I write. And also I want to portray something positive. I don't like to, degrade other people. I typically don't go that route. So, getting backlash didn't really happen because I never really fully put it out there that this is how I was feeling. Certain people knew, like, for example, I'm on Facebook. I know what the response will be if I post certain things. So why even go through that? Because it's not going to result into a discussion. It's going to result into, bantering back and forth and arguing. And that's not what I'm interested in. And I care about my time and my sanity. So I always look for certain avenues to bounce ideas off of people, even if I disagree. I went to certain websites that were free speech. I've even had interesting conversations with actual white supremacists. And
wow, where did you find them?
As funny as that sounds, I won't give any particular websites or anything like that. But it was interesting though, because it wasn't vitriolic. It was, this is how I feel. And I was like, okay. And I understood why they felt a certain way. Okay. And there was a mutual respect. And as
Wow.
weird as that sounds.
That's amazing that you could like,
And we,
yeah, talk to them.
yeah. And there's a couple of times even on the website, they kind of looked out for me and said, watch out, this guy's a troll. But it was one of those things where I put myself in an environment to learn from people, to actually have conversations, even if I, critically disagree with them. And that's the type of conversations that I think that we're missing. We live too much in a bubble, and we don't actually try to understand each other. And just a little bit of background about myself. I'm a former liberal.
Yep, same.
And so I've had a transformation myself. Yeah. I was a default Democrat, and I had a personal transformation, I would say, through the past couple of years. And I kind of detail it in the book a little bit, just the people I ran into and what started to change my mind and open up my eyes a little bit. But just these important conversations needed to be had for myself, and new information be presented so I can be more critical about it. But yeah.
Can you remember any standout moments or conversations that were like, and for me too, same thing, like the process of my like sort of walking away from the left was like incremental, but for me there were like a few standout conversations. Like I know that meeting Larry Sharpe, who was a libertarian candidate for governor of New York, was a big one, because then he sort of cracked open like the idea of how I identified. I was like, oh, I guess I'm not a liberal, like, but you get so firmly entrenched into like the titles and like who we talk to and like how we identify. So can you think of any conversations or any people that helped really like shake you out of it?
Absolutely. So number one, and I write about this in the book, I started traveling a few years ago, which you can imagine how pissed off I am that COVID came.
Oh man.
Yeah. So this is not to sound pompous or anything, but I was in Madrid and I was in a pub, and I was watching a game, and I happened to meet a guy from Manchester who's been living in Spain for a number of years. And we just started talking about football and then comedy. Real cool guy. His name is Louis. And we just kept in contact. When I meet people, I like to keep in contact with them, even if they're across the world. And so we would just have conversations back and forth. It was always respectful. It was always very genuine. And then one day we got on the topic of Brexit, and he expressed that he's for Brexit. And I said, that's interesting. I thought, Brexit's supposed to be like this whole white people don't want foreigners, or, whatever kind of nonsense. And he explained to me almost verbatim that America would never allow for an outside governing body to dictate what it does. And I said, that's a really good damn point. And it's that kind of, it was just that one statement that kind of like had me think like, I never heard that perspective. And that's a really good point. We wouldn't like it. And so we started talking a little bit more, and it was actually him that introduced me to Thomas Sowell. And that was a really big movement for myself politically, to really look at certain things. Funny enough, so my move from being liberal actually didn't just go right. My move to becoming more conservative and libertarian actually went left. So I started watching Jimmy Dore, and Jimmy Dore cannot stand the Democrats. But and as much as I was like, am I progressive? Let me listen to his ideas. And he was pointing out all the corruption, all the things. He was talking about stuff that I never heard about. And it made me realize that the media has been continually lying. And I just didn't realize it. I was completely blind to it. And also, I never questioned it. And,
yeah, me too.
And so like the introduction to my book is called Questions. And so I'm just listing a bunch of questions because I started to realize that I need to question everything in my life. I need to question myself. I need to question my upbringing, my environment, what I believe in, my principles, my morals, all these different things. I needed to question more because my politics was a huge blind spot for myself. And I didn't question anything. I just watched the news and I just said, okay, that's what's going on today, and just kept it moving. But I never questioned the motive. I never questioned the narrative, the slant, the angle. I never questioned any of that. So watching Jimmy Dore was actually a huge thing for myself. It really solidified how much I hate the Democrats. That's the best way of putting it, and how slimy they were. So I started listening to more conservative views, and the conservative views actually made more sense to me because I'm a much more logical person. And then I started to kind of listen to libertarians a little bit. So I'm in like this weird place where I don't personally identify as a Republican. I identify more as a libertarian, and like a politically independent, but I'm more like libertarian viewpoints, politically conservative, personally socially conservative, and I feel like that feels way more natural for myself moving forward in my life. So that's kind of, I went kind of left and right, and now I'm somewhere in like this gray area.
Yeah, no, that's great. Like it's such an important message for everybody to question every part of your life, because I was the same way. I never thought that the media was lying. It honestly took Trump for me to like really take another look at the media and like realize that's most of it is propaganda and not reality. And that just like, once you accept that, then you look at the whole world so much differently. Which brings us to this point that your book is about, like why should folks question this idea of Black victimhood, which I feel like has been around for decades, and it seems like something that definitely folks do profit from, and maybe it helps them, I don't know, get attention, or maybe it helps them financially. Why do you think this idea of Black victimhood is worth questioning?
It's worth questioning because there are too many apparatuses in play that profit off of it. I like to bring it back to 1960s, the civil rights movement. I try not to, in the book, I don't really harp on the past. I think we do that too much. So I talk about very specific points, but I try to keep it towards the present, like what it is today. Because I wasn't alive in the 60s or anything like that. But, the civil rights movement, in my opinion, was necessary to be had. Martin Luther King's message was important, and it led for the largest institution, the U.S. government, to get involved to make sure that we are all treated equally under the eyes of the law. Personally, how we treat each other is a different story. The government can't dictate if you like me or not. But making the law equal officially was imperative to get to the point where we are today. What happened from that is we showed that with a certain level of activism, we're able to get the biggest government in the world to move in a particular direction. And with that comes power. People realize that if we can get the government to do certain things with certain advocacy, we can continually do this. And we will always be able to do this if we leverage the guilt of other people to move this forward. If people don't feel guilty, why would they advocate for anything? If people don't feel that there's a necessity for something, why would they advocate for it? So if you start paying attention, what you'll notice is anytime there's something significant that wants to move forward, especially from the Democrats, they will invoke Black people. They will say this harms Black people, or this disenfranchises Black people, or this is for the benefit of Black people. And when you dig deeper, it has nothing to do with us. So even from the side of the government has always been there to take advantage of Black Americans, to utilize us as victims. And once you're a victim, you're rendered vulnerable to any type of persuasion or to get you to move in a direction that benefits someone else except for yourself. But to kind of go back into the activism part, after Martin Luther King and his assassination, this left a hole for so-called Black leadership. So that's when you see the Jesse Jacksons, the Al Sharptons, you know, this type of what I call race hustling. You know, they found a niche that could always keep being perpetuated, and no one questions it, and it's become almost habitual. There's a reason why a lot of these so-called Black leaders are part of a ministry. You know, there's always some religious association with it, because religion was extremely important for Black Americans. You know, that was our center, that was our core, especially the Christian church. So there's a reason why there's a Reverend Jesse Jackson, a Reverend Al Sharpton. They're reverends by name, I don't know by actions, but they take advantage of that hole that Martin Luther King left, and we've become so used to activism on behalf of other Black people that we no longer know how to be independent and how to save ourselves and advocate for ourselves, which is why we've become even more collectivists over a period of time. Everything, and I don't want to say all Black Americans, but there is a culture of constantly referring to ourselves in a group rather than what we can do as individuals. So I always see myself as Adam first, and I just happen to be Black, rather than I'm a Black man and my name is Adam. You know, there's a difference in how I view myself in the world. And it's not to reduce my race or my heritage or anything like that. It's to prevent other people from trying to manipulate who I am and what I am based off of my skin color. And that's the ultimate message. What I'm trying to portray in the book is, if you allow yourself to be manipulated based off of your skin color, other people will take advantage of it. And I point out example after example of how this is happening, even in a short time frame of the past year. You know, 2020 was the year of you know, Black victimhood and you know, liberal savior complex. You know, there was and this was actually funny enough a perfect time to write this book, because there was just so many examples I could write from, and it gave me so much motivation, which is why it took me about 10 months to just write this book, because I almost every week there was something ridiculous that would come up on my news feed, and it made me write even more. But ultimately, to kind of get back to the point, when we become collectivists, we lose our agency as individuals. And so what I'm trying to do is talk about being principled and not being such collectivists, understanding that you have power within yourself. You don't need the government to save you. You don't need you know, some politician to advocate for you. You don't need people to save you a job because they pity you. You know, all of these different things are done not for your benefit, for someone else's benefit, so they can feel better about themselves, so they can make money off of you. And I have a chapter called, you know, was it the Black elite? I'm sorry, it's been a while since I.
You know, it makes me think of like when Biden said like, oh, if you don't vote for me, then you ain't Black. Like, that's like the most glaring example of like, don't think for yourself, like just be in this group think and like, oh, all I have to be is Black, and that means I support Joe Biden. Well, good, that's less thinking for me. And if enough people are on board with that, then they're all gonna vote for him, I guess. To me, that sounded so incredibly condescending. And I don't know. It's like, do you think, and this is true of like any group, there's always going to be a group of people who are looking to not think for themselves, who are just like, all right, this celebrity is voting for Biden, or this celebrity is voting for Trump, and I like that celebrity, so good. Now I don't have to look into their policies for myself. Like, everyone, you know, all different groups are guilty of that, you know, just not wanting to think for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, we always take certain things into account. We're tribalistic. It doesn't matter, you know, if you want to do it by race or region. We always find a way to associate with other people. That part is something that you have to actively be aware of, and you try to fight against, so you don't become manipulated. So, you know, I do associate with being Black. I have some affinity towards other Black people, but I care more about people in general. And in the book, I we a bunch of times, and I'm referring to myself and other Black people. So even within the book, I don't distance myself from other Black Americans, because I am not perfect as well, and I have to do my part into not falling into these particular traps as well. So much of the book is not pushing or even pointing fingers at Black Americans. It's actually very compassionate and understanding. And I use my personal story to highlight certain things and make a particular point as to why it's important. So I'm within the book, I'm very vulnerable. I'm very open about my life, and I critique myself. I critique, people I love, my father, and what had happened with him in my life. So I critique everything. So I'm pretty fair, and I don't really wave the finger at anybody in particular. So yeah.
Were you not so close with your dad?
No, I was not. So just to give a little bit of a background, my father had me at a late age. He was 50 years old. My mom was in her early 20s, and he was never really in my life. I actually found out in my teenage years that he wanted an abortion, and my mother didn't go through with it. And my sister is older than myself, and we have the same father. So, that part stuck with me a little bit growing up, but he wasn't really in my life. We moved around a lot. He never really showed interest. There were a couple times that we ended up being homeless when I was a kid.
Wow.
Bouncing around from hotel to hotel. At one point, we even stayed with a woman who offered a room in her trailer, just so we didn't, sleep in a car or anything like that. And another time, we had to stay in a homeless shelter while my mother is. All of this was while my mother was working full time and
Wow.
And trying to do the best that she could. To pay child support through the court system, but it was a very small amount from what I remember. But even still, a child support check doesn't replace your father. And throughout all these particular things, I talk about how it affected me emotionally as a kid, struggling to understand myself as a man, going through moments of depression, feeling suicidal. All of these things kind of stem from the lack of confidence that I had, and the role of the father is supposed to build the confidence of his son, especially, and lacking that masculinity, and all these different things I had to learn on my own. So, ultimately, my father, he died a few years ago, and I actually didn't find out that he died until a few months after he passed away.
Wow.
So that's kind of our relationship throughout my life. So,
That's so hard.
I talk about that. Yeah. I talk about that very, very deeply in the book. I'm very open about what I felt like. And it's sad to say, I didn't cry when I found out my father died. I didn't feel anything, because my father always felt like a stranger in my life.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
That's really hard. And it seems like, it seems like the way you were raised, the hardships you dealt with, watching your mom deal with all this stress, it would be very understandable if you grew up to be a very angry adult, and you don't at all. You are very peaceful and calm, and you have a great energy about you. So how did what do you attribute that to? I mean, you're really balanced, and how did you get through that?
I think when you move around a lot, it makes you more reserved, because you're always starting over. So I think a lot of people have childhood friends. I have high school friends, and that's basically it, because I moved so many times, and so I became more observant, and I would actually make the argument that I took on more feminine traits as I was a young man, because it was just my mother and my sister. So I was definitely more sensitive when I was a child. I was definitely more reserved, and I wasn't very strong. I wasn't very strong-willed. I wasn't very confident. I was always looking for acceptance, especially from other women. So these particular things kind of led for my personal development to be as reserved as I am. Now, I would say I'm more stoic. I've had some of those traits, but I'm definitely more stoic. I'm very calm. I'm calm under pressure, especially like in a work environment. Nothing really phases me. And so I had to kind of grow into that. But as a kid, you know, I didn't understand what being stoic was, and I was kind of sensitive, and I was very reserved. You know, I didn't really talk too much. I still don't talk too much. I like to listen, observe, and if I open my mouth, I want it to be important. So I still act in that same way.
Well, it's like, I mean, it's really amazing because you just hear, you know, no matter like what color you are, like kids who grow up without a strong like father figure, it's like what you wrote about. It's just, it's not a good situation. And like my parents, they never divorced. I always felt like they should have, because I just would constantly hear them fighting. They were passive aggressive to each other. They were constantly cutting each other down, and like just constantly fighting, always fighting about money, like never propped each other up in like the way that men and women I think should, you know, like, not that it has to be like fake, but like, yeah, telling the other person they look beautiful, or like, you know, showing appreciation. Like they both didn't do that for each other, and they both were cutting each other down. And on one hand, it was like great for my developing like my sense of humor, because we were all just so sarcastic and like just roasting each other. But on the other hand, I was like, I didn't have like the best relationship with my dad. And it's interesting, like listening to you talk about like how you grew to be like a stoic adult. Like that sounds so much like my brother. Because my dad didn't really, I don't know. I think he kind of gave him a hard time for not being like an athletic kid. Like they just, I don't know. I'll have to talk to my brother and sister about that. But I feel like none of us really had a full like father presence. Like even though he was there and he was working and always talking about how much money that we cost and how hard he had to work to keep everybody going, like I didn't feel like he understood us, and I don't feel like he understood me at all. And so as an adult, it's like, you know, like I made jokes, like when my mom got sick with cancer and died a few years ago, like I made jokes like, oh, the wrong parent got cancer. And it's like, I'm trying to speak to that part of you that's like, when he died, I didn't feel anything. Like I'm sure when my dad dies, I will feel a lot, but that's a really real reaction to have, because if a parent hasn't put time into building a relationship, like, and then maybe they go to it later in life, like I feel like my dad is trying to do now. I'm just like, I just don't feel like you gave a shit to get to know me. So yeah, it's like I'm not gonna call you for advice. Sorry, I kind of am fine without you. But it would have been nice. Like I totally agree. I feel like I would have had so much more confidence and grown up with more self-esteem, like had I had a stronger bond with my father. And I think it affects like men and women differently as you grow up. So people don't realize how important it is. They're like, oh, the nuclear family, whatever, no big deal. You know, like I could have a strong mom or a strong two moms or whatever, but it's just the ripple effect of not having a strong like dad presence in your life is larger than most people realize. And that seems to be a big problem in the Black community. And so what are your feelings on like, what is the government's role here? Because you'll hear so many people talk about like, well, you know, Black men, they make up a smaller percentage of the population, but they commit a larger amount of the crimes. And then people will say, oh, well, that's because of institutionalized racism. And that's because the cops are all racist and bad. And I'm sure like, yeah, had you been on Facebook, you know, before you wrote your book, hashing this out, you'd be hearing a lot of that. So I guess like what do you say to people who feel like, well, it's all the government's fault, or it's all cops are bad, and what's the point? Like, I guess that feels like, to me, that sounds like somebody who is more wrapped up in the victim story, but I wonder how you feel.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the statistics as far as incarceration rates, I actually talk about it in the book, and I list those statistics because it's important to understand, to be honest about what's happening around us. You know, I've looked at statistics from the early 1900s, you know, like in the 1930s. You know, the incarceration rate for Black Americans was on par with the population. So, you know, this is a time when we had legal discrimination in half of the country, or at least a region of the country, I should say. So in a time period when we have legal discrimination in a region of the country, our prison rates were nowhere near what they are today.
Wow.
Meanwhile, if you look on the family side, we were at times more likely to be married and had a nuclear family versus other races in this country. So the degradation of the family is almost coincides with all the economic issues, all the crime issues, imprisonment issues. The other thing I would also say is just being logical about it. If people talk about the reason why Black Americans are Black, we should just say Black men because we know it's majority Black men. The reason why Black men are locked up in prison is because of institutional racism. So my rebuttal would be, so are you proposing that majority of the Black men that are locked up are innocent? And no one ever says that. No one actually gives that rebuttal. So are you upset? Because if you say no, they're not innocent, then my rebuttal would be, so are you upset that the police are doing their job and they're just being really efficient about catching certain people? I mean, are you upset that they caught too many Black people? I mean,
oh man, yeah.
You know, it's uncomfortable.
Let some of them go. Yeah,
that,
like yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's uncomfortable to really say that, but I'm just making the point that, you know, this is not about institutional racism or within the government to lock up Black men as some sort of conspiracy theory. And actually, I would think that we're more useful not locked up. We've been a great tool for the government outside of the jail system. But needless to say, the role of the government that I like to talk about in the book is similar to what other conservatives talk about, how, you know, the government basically incentivizes other people to replace the father with a government check, or you know, the family court system, which incentivizes women to take the children away from the father. You know, so all these different things, the government gets involved. And it crosses racial lines as well, but especially if you talk about in the Black community, there's a constant reinforcement of just bad behavior that the government allows and incentivizes for people. And it's a lack of care by the government to keep families together, and they're perfectly fine with, you know, giving people money just to separate, or even, you know, I would argue about child support. You know, how justified is child support today when women are, you know, in a lot of cases more educated, you know, they're working as much or more than men. So,
Yeah.
you know, that's a whole other conversation. But in the book, I kind of give an example of what it's like for someone who could legitimately in America live their life completely surrounded by the government. You know, they could live in government housing. They can get fed by the government. They can go to the doctor on the government's dime. Every little thing that they do is dictated and paid for by the government. And ultimately, it's kind of a depressing viewpoint when you think about it, that you could have literally no agency and the government pays for everything, but also decides what you do and how you live and how much support they give you. And it keeps you in a level of mediocrity. So I kind of make that point. But also within the chapter, I talk about how the government uses Black Americans consistently for whatever viewpoint that they want. So like something recently, I kind of wish this happened while I was writing the book, the voting rights in
Right.
Georgia.
Oh, it's racist to have an ID.
A big deal about it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Black people don't know how to make it to the DMV.
I can't understand that one. That's too big to wrap my head around. Like,
Yeah, and even when it first happened, I was like, all right, let me take a look for myself, and I'm reading it, reading it, and I'm like, what is controversial about this? I don't see it, and I'm watching people on television, especially these black elites in the media, who are whining about something that is not there, and all they're doing is hashing up this historical emotion that Black Americans are trained to carry. Um, and like, hey, remember Jim Crow? This is what they did in Jim Crow. And it's like, I'm 36. I don't remember Jim Crow. Why are you telling me to feel this emotional pain of people from before myself on a consistent basis? And I want to
Yeah.
talk about that
Keep looking
because
backwards.
there is a
Yeah.
lot of that. Keep looking backwards.
Who,
Slavery.
when you say Black elites, who do you mean specifically? Do you mean celebrities? Do you mean like the reverends that you mentioned before, or is it kind of all of it?
All of them. LeBron James, Oprah Winfrey's, the media elite, the government elite. These are people. And here's what's the most offensive thing: these are the most successful Black people in the history of the world. Right? These are some of the most economically privileged people, even against any other racial demographic. Oprah Winfrey's a billionaire. Why is she giving out demagoguery about victimhood for Black people and how much they have to struggle? Like, could you imagine that any other racial group talking about how hard it is for them as they're standing on billions of dollars? Like that part offends me, because what they're saying is, ignore what I've been able to do because I'm special. You're incapable of doing this. And that's the message that they're portraying. But in reality, they're it's absolutely arrogant. But the other part is they're profiting off of it. So they're profiting off of the confusion of the average Black American. They're ramping up the narrative, whether it be for money or for clout, to appear a particular way. If I seem high and mighty and I'm trying to help people and I'm selling my jersey and I'm selling shoes and I'm selling a book, you're going to buy it. It's these same people that the only time you see them that show up on television is when they talk about Black people being victimized. That is the only time you hear from them. They have no other opinion. I talk about the intellectual elite, the Michael Eric Dysons, who purposely speaks really fast, and he speaks in a particular way that is confusing. No one ever fully understands what he's trying to say, but they surrender to, you have to admit that he's extremely skilled. I give him full credit, but they say nothing about it. And they say, yes, whatever you just said right there, you're so smart, such a genius. And it's that manipulation. And I see right through it. All of what is happening is a manipulation. And I notice that the only people who are saying that I can't do something are the people who've been able to do something. And it's over and over and over. And so that's why when I say elite, sometimes we throw that word around, but what I'm saying is these are people who are of actual privilege. These are people who are at the top of whatever game that they're in. So if the people who are showing up on MSNBC, they're at the top. The people who have their own TV shows, they're at the top. LeBron James is at the top. All these different people, they're at the top of whatever field that they proclaim to be in. And they're saying that I can't do what they're doing. I can't be as successful as themselves. And somehow racism skipped over them because they're somehow special, or there's a glitch in the matrix. And that is the manipulation tactic, and that is extremely offensive to myself.
Of course, because look at Oprah. She started out like just with like her I don't know if she was even a reporter before she got her own show, but like through hard work and just developing her skills and her interview skills, like worked her way up to the top, and then obviously had a really great business mind. And then LeBron, like through skill, like, so it's exactly what you're saying. Like, well, it's not about how hard you work or how athletically talented or artistic you are. Like, we were the exceptions. Like, guys, don't try, when really they should be the example of like, yeah, if you work your ass off and you study hard, or you're, you don't give up, or you just like you find your talents and nurture them and just dedicate yourself to growing your skills, like, yeah, you can crush it, no matter what your skin color is. Yeah, that's infuriating.
Right.
And
Yeah, and those
it's almost like,
particular people, they always get propped up.
it's almost like, do they not want competition? Do you think that's even a thought? Like, they low key don't, like, Oprah doesn't want another like black TV mogul because would it threaten her? I don't know if it's that conscious.
No, I think a lot of them jump on what is hot. So what is hot is critical race theory. What's hot is anti-racism. They want to profit when the money is there, and there is money there. And there's money to be had from liberals who are well-intentioned, but they don't see any other message that comes out. So they just buy the books, and they watch the seminars, and they pay for the anti-racism training, and corporations jump on it because of liability. So you have all these people who are making so much money off of thinking that they're helping someone like myself when they're really not.
Yeah, it is wild. Like, I have friends who talk about, like, now every 6 months I have a new inclusion test to complete for work, a new, like, it's always like, I don't know, sexual harassment or like diversity training, and it's like, my friends are just like assistants. It's like, these are people that are not even in hiring positions. Like, they're just like, yeah, I'm gonna make copies the same way whether I take this inclusion course or not. Like, I still have to just get coffee, and I don't know, just, I don't know, answer phones. It seems like it's a bit much. When do you think the liberal savior complex, like, really kind of blew up? Like, did you think, does it correlate with this, like you mentioned before, this need to fill the shoes of, like, Martin Luther King? Like, did this idea come about at the same time, or is it a little bit newer than that?
So I can only go off of my personal experience. From what I've seen, and just kind of growing up, and like I said, I've been around white people my entire life. I don't remember the trend of being, like, pitied by white people.
Yeah, it's icky.
They treated me equally. They saw me in a particular way, and that was fine. And I was always cool with that. And I never really heard other white people who were I'm sure they existed, but I don't remember it being prevalent. I guess is the point I'm
Did you experience, like, have you experienced a lot of racism, do you think, like, you personally in your life?
No, not really, to be honest with you. There were times in my life where I felt uncomfortable somewhere, but nothing in particular happened towards me, and it could have just been in my head, but it could have just been intuition that some people are staring at you, or people are looking at you, and funny enough, probably the most uncomfortable I felt being stared at was when I had a white girlfriend and I was walking at the Jersey Shore. So that was probably the most I've ever felt stares. In the book, I kind of talk about the first time.
Did she want you guys to have matching T-shirts, like on the boardwalk?
No, it was definitely a weird situation to feel it, but even still, that's why, like, in the book, I never deny that there's racism. I never deny that racism exists. Obviously, it exists because hatred exists. It's part of the human condition. I could hate you for the color of your hair. It's just as arbitrary as the color of my skin. So, I never deny these things. What I am saying is I'm putting everything in perspective, that racism, thankfully, is at the bottom of the list as far as the problems that I've experienced in my life. So, my experience has overwhelmingly been positive, whether it be by cops or, I've had a couple situations with cops, but, like, nothing crazy, just annoying. Whether it be by other white Americans or anyone else, I haven't really experienced much of that. So yeah, racism to me, and granted, everybody has their personal experience. I know of people who've, had really bad issues with white cops, and they're very paranoid about it. And I get it. You're a product of your situation. And I know people who've had bad racial experiences. They were targeted. I get that. So I understand for those particular people, but that is not the majority. The majority of people are able to move about their lives, do whatever they want to do, and the problems that they're facing and the shortcomings that they have are actually their fault. They're accountable for those particular things. So, pointing the finger at someone else is just another victim move to me.
So what would you say to somebody who, like, maybe they have experienced a lot of racism in their life, and like, how would you say to them, like, okay, or how would you convince them to advocate for themselves rather than like rely or like pay attention to, like, yeah, like a liberal savior, or sort of defer to other people to stand up for them?
I have a quote that I like to use. When I talk to certain people, I tell them that God has given you the ability to always overcome any situation. So if someone has experienced situations where there was racism that was involved, and there's someone who is religious, and I think the majority of Black Americans consider themselves religious according to statistics, then I would say lean on your faith. We are children of God, so you unfortunately met some flawed human beings, but that doesn't mean that the rest of the world looks the way that you experience. I always try to lean on that. And there is importance of looking at the individual when it comes to these particular situations, so you don't make a sweeping judgment. Just to kind of highlight a little bit, the last 9 chapters in my book are solution chapters. They are very realistic, achievable things. One of the chapters, I think is one of the most important chapters, is finding commonality with other people, essentially, is what it's talking about. Finding someone that appears different than yourself, and finding a way to see yourself in that person. So I actually talk about a particular person that's in my life today. He's in his 70s, he's white, he's a veteran. And on the surface, we have nothing in common. But when we started talking to each other, we realized that we carried a lot of the same emotional pain as children, because he grew up without his father. He actually doesn't even know who his father is.
Wow.
So we both experienced that lost feeling as young men. And, I moved around a lot, even in my adulthood. He moved around a lot. He went from country to country. And he has an amazing story, when we talk about his life experience. But, he suffered a lot, drinking and things of that nature, to try and figure out who he was. And in a very short period of time, he really opened up to me and talked about certain things. And, he was kind of disconnected from his children too, because of his drinking. And so now he's actually working towards reunifying with his children. I know one of his children has been more receptive to getting back in his life. And, he's in the latter stages of his life, and I advocate for him to do the best that he can. Prove to your children that you are sorry, and try to make the best that you can for the rest of your life. Our lives aren't about this arbitrary nonsense about skin color or age, or race, or sex, or any of that stuff. It's about human connections. It's about the human spirit. And if I can empathize and I can talk to someone who looks nothing like me, not from the same place, we don't even know each other, we're essentially strangers, and we could build a bond based off of some type of commonality, then why can't other people do that? And I think that is what is of the utmost importance when it comes to living. What's the point of living in a particular tribe and not looking at the rest of the world and finding something beautiful within it? I could easily have just ignored him and not taken the lessons that he's he's taught to me, and he could have done the same with with myself. And there, just in just one interaction, we were able to grow as human beings. And that is what this is all about. This is about connecting with people. And this racial division that's happening in America, we're not connecting with people anymore. We're just sitting in our corners and trying to feel good about ourselves and trying to be high and mighty and want to be on the quote unquote right side of history. What does that gain you? It gains you nothing. Spiritually, morally, it gains you nothing. You think you're just better than other people. You're just as imperfect as myself. So, I want people to gravitate towards others, whether they're different ideology than yourself, complexion, whatever, gravitate towards other people and try to find a way to have some commonality with them. This isn't the Joe Biden, we need to come together nonsense. This is like genuine, find something beautiful in other people, other cultures, and actually appreciate it and be receptive when people want to find out about yours.
Yeah, I wonder too if the obsession with racism in this country would not be so big if more folks were more connected with God. And I'm not like everyone needs to find Christianity, but I don't know. I feel like it would help. I feel like it would put a lot into perspective, and it would help a lot of people deal with their anger or feeling lost, to know that they're loved and taken care of, and they just have to trust in the path,
No, I actually agree with you. I mean, that was, and I actually talk about finding God in the book. When I was a kid, we would go to church every so often, but it was inconsistent. So it kind of left me empty. In my mid-20s, I was trying to figure out what I am, because by default, I was just saying I was a Christian, but was I actually a Christian? So for many years, I just considered myself agnostic. And it wasn't till, I would say, over a period of time, some weird things happened in my life. Some of the best moments happen out of the worst events in my life, and meeting certain people. And when I started becoming more open to God in my life and praying more and being thankful, my life started to change for the positive in my career, in my personal life, in my self growth. Becoming more open, seeing the world in a different light, which I think personally has allowed for me to change politically, and see things in a different light as well, and just growing as a man and becoming more confident. All of these things kind of coincided, and I think God is one of those entities that has been really important for me. And if I'm completely honest, releasing this book as essentially a nobody who just, sat at his desk and just wrote his feelings, my message has been very receptive, and I've had so many great people who reach out to me, who want to help, who want to spread the message, and I know that God has put them in my place. So, I'm extremely grateful, and the blessings they're continually coming in my direction, and I can feel them coming. So, God has been extremely important in my life, especially these particular days, when, 10 years ago, I didn't know if he even existed.
Yeah, I don't know. Me too. I don't know if it's a getting older thing or what, or just being more vulnerable. But yeah, it all starts with being grateful, and then once you kind of are grateful for the blessings. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, right? But then more, it all just keeps coming, and your life really can change so dramatically. This is not my pitch term to become Christian, but I don't know. I think it's better than a lot of alternatives. And I think that's what the government too, they want to be your daddy. They want to be your religion and your God. And it's you don't need them for any of that. And it's just it's a cycle that sets you up to be stifled for your whole life. So this sounds like a really important book.
Absolutely.
And I'm so excited to read it. Where can people follow you, find you? Where can they reach out to you if they, have questions or, just want to stay in touch?
Yeah, I try to make myself as accessible as possible. So You can find me on Facebook if you go to facebook.com/Coleman Writes, WRITES. That's my Facebook like page. On Twitter, I'm at wrong_speak. So I tweet under the Wrong Speak Publishing account. I try to be on the free speech platforms, MeWe and Parler every so often. You can also go to wrongspeak.net, where I publish articles, thought-provoking articles, things that are helpful. I try not to be extremely partisan, and I also want people to contribute. If you want to be heard, and you want to be able to express yourself, I take contributions from the average person as well, because I was once that person who just wanted to be heard. Oh, there you go.
Oh yeah, look at this. Awesome. Oh, this is great. And then people can order, this is where they can find you and follow. People can order your book, I guess. Is it on Amazon? Is it?
Yeah, it's actually on Amazon. It's on Barnes & Noble, but I am selling signed copies. If you want, you can go to wrongspeak.net and go to the store, and I'll ship you a personal signed copy along with a personalized message. So,
oh my God.
So yeah.
Awesome. Adam, thank you so much for coming on. It was such a joy to talk to you. I can't wait to read your book.
Likewise.
Yeah, I'm very impressed by you. Keep it up. Keep it up.
You.
All right. I'll talk to you soon, buddy. Bye.